Hello all. So if you have a Honda with the P1399 code, I thought I'd go over what it is and the different fixes for it and what causes it and things like this. And this P1399 code is kind of notorious with Hondas. There's many different things that can cause it. And so I'm going to go over the things that I found with this code and things that I've done to fix it. If you fix this code or if I missed something or something like that, please comment down below. Let us know what information you have. And so what is this Honda P1399 code? Well, it's a random cylinder misfire detected. And what does this all mean? Well, basically, as a piston goes up and down inside the cylinders, it's going to go through 4 different cycles. It's going to have an intake cycle where it takes in fuel and air. It's going to have a compression cycle that pushes the cylinder up to the top and compresses the mixture. And when it reaches the top, the spark plug is going to ignite the mixture, and that's going to send the cylinder back down, and the whole cycle is going to be repeated. When you get a misfire code, for some reason, the spark plug is not igniting the mixture. Basically, this cylinder wouldn't be working, or it's working sometimes and then not other times. And usually when you get a cylinder misfire, the computer's going to come up and tell you which cylinder is misfiring. So like if it was cylinder number 1 misfiring, then you know to go check out that cylinder. You go check out the coil on that cylinder, the injector on that cylinder, and things like this. But when you're getting a P1399 code, it's a random misfire. So it's not telling you which cylinder is misfiring. It's not misfiring all the time. And so for this reason, sometimes this code can be kind of difficult to troubleshoot. And if you are getting other codes, be sure to pay attention to that because that's going to help point you to what the problem is. And so what are going to be some causes of a Honda with the P1399 code? Well, the first thing that could cause this is that one or more of these coils are going bad and they just need to be replaced. If these coils have a lot of miles on them, it might be a good idea to go ahead and replace them, especially if the vehicle has 150,000 miles or more or something along these lines. If you just had one misfire code, you could swap it with another one and then see if the problem follows. But since this is random, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do. Keep in mind the wiring going to those coils can also cause issues if there's a bad connection or anything like this. But one thing that you can do to try to pinpoint it is that you can remove the spark plugs on each one of those cylinders and just check to see how they're burning inside of there, because the tip's going to be different depending on how well that cylinder's burning. For example, right here, it's really white. So that means that cylinder's running lean, which means more air than fuel is going into that cylinder. If this tip was really dark, then that would mean that it's running rich, and that would mean more fuel than air is going into that cylinder. And if it was just completely coated in fuel and things like this, then that cylinder might not be firing at all. And you can look up spark plug burn charts online so you can match them up to it. You can get a better idea on how that cylinder is burning. But basically, that's one method to try to figure out if all these cylinders are firing the way they should be. And for example, say you pull out one and it's coated in oil and you know it's not firing, then you know to look closer at that cylinder. And that would mean checking out this coil more or the wiring going to it. This is also going to include the ejectors going to each one of those cylinders. If there's some kind of issue going on with one of these ejectors, it's faulty, it's starting not to spray correctly or things like this, then these can also cause a P1399 code. There's some different tests you could do on these. You could use a multimeter, different things like this. Again, if you pull out the spark plugs, you can check to see how that cylinder's burning. That could give you an idea on how that cylinder is performing and if that injector is dumping too much fuel inside of there or just not working at all. Also, be sure to check out those spark plugs because if they are really super old, they got a lot of miles on them, then that can also cause issues because they won't be sparking correctly. Another common problem with this code is that the EGR valve becomes all clogged up and it needs to be cleaned. Usually these will give you other codes, but many people do run into this problem where the EGR valve gets all clogged up and all the passages that go into the engine, they get all clogged up and that just causes issues. For those who don't know what the EGR valve is, it basically just takes exhaust gases from the exhaust and feeds them back up to the air intake. And this can help lower the temperature inside the combustion chambers, which helps to reduce NOx gases and things like this. It's a fairly simple device. It's just a small valve that opens and shuts, and it'll have these passages that go from the exhaust around and up back into the air intake. And quite often these all get clogged up. And if that does happen, quite often you can just take everything apart and clean it up and get all that grime and build up out of it and things like this. And usually that'll get everything working again. Sometimes that EGR valve does fail. But like I said, usually this will give you another code. But many people who have a problematic Honda with the P1399 code, they have good luck cleaning up those passages and that EGR valve. The next thing that can cause this is a fuel delivery up to the engine, and this would be something like a faulty fuel pump or a clogged up fuel filter or something like that. There's some different ways to go about testing this. One of the better ways is to use a fuel pressure gauge, and you attach it in line up around the engine on the fuel rail or the gas lines going up to the fuel rail. Quite often Honda doesn't make this easy, so you have to use like a T or something like that depending on your Honda to be able to attach a fuel pressure gauge. If you do go to do a fuel pressure test, it's a good idea to look up like YouTube videos or look at the forums and things like this to see how other people attach the fuel pressure gauge, since sometimes Honda doesn't make this easy. Many vehicles have a port right on the fuel rail, but quite often Honda doesn't have that. But there is methods to attach it. But basically you check what the fuel pressure is and you check what your Honda is supposed to be rated to be running at. So for example, say your Honda is rated to be running at 55 PSI and you go to check it and for some reason it's running at 50, then you know there's some kind of problem going on with the fuel pressure. And again, this would be like a faulty fuel pump or a clogged up fuel filter or something like that. But like I said, that's just one method to go about testing this. But the next thing on the list is going to be there's some kind of problem with the fuel delivery up to the engine. And the next thing on the list that could possibly cause this is going to be that there's something going on with the air going into the engine. And so this is going to be something like a really dirty air filter, or for some reason a passage is blocked where the air is going into the engine, or a bad sensor like a bad mass airflow sensor or something like that. Although usually if you did have a bad MAF sensor, you would get other codes. But basically if there's something blocking the air going into the engine, then this is going to cause issues. And so the next thing on the list is going to be there's something going on with the air intake. And the last thing on the list is going to be something that's blocking the exhaust from escaping and going out the tailpipe. And this would be something like a damaged exhaust, or something hit underneath the vehicle and damaged the exhaust and it's just blocking the flow or something like that. Or a bad catalytic converter that's become all clogged up. Again, if that happens, you're usually going to get other codes. But if there is something blocking the exhaust from escaping, then this is going to make the engine work much harder and it's just going to cause issues. So last thing on the list is going to be a blocked exhaust. I think I pretty much covered all the causes of this. If I did miss something, please comment down below, let me know. But that's basically it. If this video helps you, please click like.